Civilians under attack. The images are surreal and unsettling. In the 1950s, the threat of a Soviet nuclear attack spurred an arms race, and Americans learned to duck and cover. Today, there are new enemies wielding new weapons. Duck and cover has been replaced by duct tape and plastic sheeting. And there's a new technological arms race underway as science tries to stay one step ahead of the terrorist threat. Find out what technology can do to keep you and your family safe. June 22nd, 2001. A senior-level war game, codenamed Dark Winter, gets underway at Andrews Air Force Base in Washington, D.C. Wargaming is a time-honored practice in the U.S. military to test readiness and strategy. But this scenario is different. This time, the fictional enemy is a terrorist group. The target is the American public. And the weapon is a biological agent, smallpox. The fictional scenario begins with terrorists unleashing the deadly virus in shopping malls in 3 states. The purpose of the Dark Winter exercise was to see how ready the country was to deal with this new type of threat. How ready were we? We shall see. The threat of large-scale attacks on American civilians is not new. Long before the rise of international terrorist groups, Americans had plenty to fear from foreign armies. And many of the technologies being developed to protect Americans today are based on concepts that date back to the World Wars. A soldier from World War I would easily recognize the gas masks of today. And the recent creation of a Department of Homeland Security wouldn't have surprised President Franklin Roosevelt. FDR called his Homeland Security outfit the Office of Civilian Defense. It was formed in May of 1941, even before America's entry into World War II, to protect against sneak attacks on American cities by the Axis powers. During the Cold War, American civilians had a new reason to be fearful. They had witnessed the destructive force of the atomic bombs dropped on Japanese cities to end World War II, and they knew the Soviet Union now had the ability to devastate American cities in the same way. Technology couldn't stop a nuclear bomb, but it could give residents early warning of an impending air raid. A national radar system was developed. A radiological service was formed, using early radiation detectors to test for nuclear fallout. An especially trained chemical corps prepared against a possible gas attack. The best that technology had to offer for surviving a nuclear blast was concrete, and lots of it. In Los Angeles, the local Civil Defense Planning Board drafted a survival plan to prepare residents for nuclear attack. They recommended civilians build underground shelters of reinforced concrete, covered with 3 feet of earth, and supplied with air intake filters. A 2-person unit was estimated to cost $6,000. As recently as 1980, the government was still recommending concrete shelters for protection from nuclear attack. They issued guides to homeowners on how to build them.
There's really no technology at all. It's basic. If you want to sit down, there's a wood bench. So you want to lay down, there's a cot. If you want some water, there's a bucket over in the corner with water in it. So that's the technology they had at that time.
When the Cold War thawed, bomb shelters were abandoned, and many expected a time of extended peace. But civilians here and abroad are facing new threats, not just from governments, but from terrorist groups. Civilians today are warned to be prepared for a chemical, biological, or radiological attack. And they're looking to technology for new ways to protect their homes and families. In the face of these new threats, some wealthy individuals in Los Angeles are taking the old bomb shelter concept to the extreme.
We're building a terrorist-proof home here, and I'd like to point out some of the items that we're providing this home to make it terrorist-proof.
For years, Bill Rigdon and his company Building Consensus designed panic rooms to shield celebrities and other wealthy clients from home invaders. Lately, his clients have been calling with new fears.
Someone had mentioned on the media that we were going to be attacked with a nuclear bomb here in LA. So we got a call the next day. A guy was concerned that he was going to be attacked by a nuclear bomb, that he personally felt that he was going to be attacked. We went to that residence and basically made that room nuclear proof.
Former FBI agent Mark Llewellyn works with Rigdon.
In today's environment, with all the terrorist alerts, a lot of people have come to us looking for advice and consultation on how they can better be safe in their homes, how they can protect their families. Some of the advice we give them is very common sense type advice, just like you hear it on the news every day, to be vigilant, to look out for strange things around you. And then when we get to the far extreme, there's the safe room, and that's another mechanism that they can add in their repertoire of things to do to protect their families.
Now we're going to be over here looking at the side of the home.
Rigdon agreed to give us a rare look inside a safe room that's in the early stages of construction outside of Los Angeles.
You can see by walking down this corridor how wide it is, and that's for a reason, because we want to have this access way into this part of the house be very usable during an emergency. If it's late at night, you're groggy, you're walking around, you're trying to figure out and orientate yourself. This is where the panic room door will be. It's in a pocket, it's going to slam out and close. You better not be standing here. And it is blast proof, it's bulletproof, it's slam-proof, it's everything.
A popular item among Rigdon's clients are anti-ballistic wall panels. They're made of Kevlar, the same material as bulletproof vests, and are blast-resistant and fireproof.
Here we have the material that we're going to bolt onto the walls here. We took this down to the firing range and fired a .22 caliber bullet here. We fired a .357, 44, and also another 44 round in a 45. You can see that also you have different thicknesses of this material. This is a very thin piece, and this is a level 1. This will stop like a .22 round. This material is level 2. It'll stop up to a larger caliber handgun. And then we go to level 3. You can see the thickness here. It's about double of what we have here. The reason we're going thicker on this particular project, they want that. They want that additional protection and the fireproofing.
In addition to absorbing a conventional bomb blast, some clients want added protection from chemical, biological, or radiological attack.
We're going to come into this room if there is a germ warfare attack down in LA, or if there is a dirty bomb or an explosion of an atomic bomb, a suitcase bomb down in LA. You could come into this room, which is going to have a thick plastic material. It's going to come up from the floor, it's going to come up to the walls. And what that does, it seals off anything coming inside, any germ warfare. Layer 2 will be the lead lining that's going to go over that plastic to protect you from radiation. Layer 3 will be the Kevlar. Those bullet-resistant, blast-resistant panels, and layer 4 will be the drywall. That will go over the Kevlar panels, and you will have a totally secured room.
And thanks to advances in anti-ballistic glass technology, you can now get a safe room with a view.
We're going to be installing these windows, and the reason I'm not going to hold up the window in this opening is the density. They're so heavy.
This window is absorbing a blast generated by a bomb nearly 1.5 times as powerful as the one that destroyed the Oklahoma City Federal Building.
I'm going to set this down before my arm falls off.
After an attack, a family might have to spend as long as 72 hours in their safe room. Clean air and water are essential. Rigdon offers high-efficiency particulate air, or HEPA filters, to remove chemicals and bacteria from the air.
anthrax, germ warfare, whatever they're throwing out there, we're going to be protected in here. What if someone poisons the water? If you look at the wall here, these pipes are going through a filtration system. It's going to take all the contaminants out and put in a separate tank, so you have a long duration of water you'll be able to use in your home in case someone contaminates the water supply that's coming in here.
Terrorist-proof safe rooms are expensive. This one costs over $500,000. For high-profile people whose homes might be direct targets of terrorist attack, the expense may be justified. But what about for the average citizen?
Now, if you're a movie star or something like that, yeah, you could, in fact, be more likely to be targeted as someone who might use conventional or unconventional means to attack you. I think for the general population, though, to think about having a safe room, again, is probably overkill.
You have to think of where is the most logical place for a terrorist attack. And certainly, it's not going to be out in the countryside on somebody's lone farm. It's more likely to happen in a major metropolitan area. It may be an entertainment area. It may be a place that has an amusement park close to it. However, terrorists may target an area which is close enough to the home where they may feel threatened and they may feel they need this safe room to protect their family.
We're looking out here in Los Angeles right now. If there's a terrorist act somewhere in Los Angeles, you could see it from right here. But you'd be safe in your home, that you knew no one could come and get you.
The engineers at BMW have taken the safe room concept out on the road. The 760i high-security model seems to have rolled out of a science fiction movie. It can repel bullets and grenades. And high-tech sensors constantly sniff the air for a gas attack, hermetically sealing the cabin at the first sign of danger and providing passengers with fresh, breathable oxygen. Not yet available in the United States, this fortress on wheels is favored by heads of state and costs over $200,000. Next, a look at affordable technologies to safeguard your home and family. It's day 2 of the Dark Winter war game, simulating a smallpox attack on America. Already, communications are breaking down among the exercise participants. Police, medical, and government personnel are having trouble figuring out chain of command.
Swanson and Telegraph.
Citizens in the affected states are starting to panic. The threat of a large-scale chemical or biological attack like the one in the Dark Winter scenario has led some Americans to purchase gas masks. Most consumer gas masks work by filtering contaminated air through a special canister. Air first passes through a HEPA filter, which removes the tiny particles that may contain viruses, bacteria, and other biological agents. Next, a specially treated bed of carbon filters out gases like sarin, VX, and mustard gas. Although they were widely used by soldiers in World War I, the first wide-scale use of gas masks by civilians took place in Britain during the German Blitz of World War II. The British government was so certain that the Nazis would use gas warfare against their cities that masks were issued to all citizens. Most Britons got the general civilian respirator, which was molded from a single piece of rubber and came in 4 different sizes. The helmet respirator was designed for people with special medical needs like asthma. It used a hand-powered bellows to assist with breathing. The baby protective helmet worked much the same way. Over 100 million civilian respirators were distributed in Britain during the war. Despite months of conventional bombing, the German gas attack never came. During World War II, there was no wide-scale distribution of gas masks to American civilians. But immediately after the bombing of Pearl Harbor, non-combatant masks were issued to civilians in Hawaii. Every child got one. Some were even issued the so-called bunny mask, which was meant to make gas mask wearing fun for kids. The first wide-scale civilian distribution of gas masks since World War II took place in Israel in 1990 at the start of the first Gulf War. With Iraqi Scud missiles targeting their country, Israeli officials feared a chemical attack. Just as the British had done 50 years earlier, the Israeli government issued gas masks to all citizens. As in Britain, the chemical attack never came. According to the Associated Press, 2 Israelis died during the war from conventional Scud attacks. But 11 died in the panic, either from heart attacks or misuse of gas masks. Still, many Americans are wondering if they should buy masks to protect themselves from attack with unconventional weapons. In the days after September 11th, there was a run on gas masks at military surplus stores. Not all masks are created equal, so it's important to know what you're buying.
To don this mask,
Dan Scrimshire is an expert on protection from chemical and biological terrorism. His company, Tricon Environmental, sells a wide range of gas masks, including the affordable Survivair Quick 2000 escape hood.
it comes in a heavy-duty seal foil bag, nothing more than tearing the top of the bag off, and just pull the mask out, open it up, and insert your head. It has a nose clip inside that you can pull to adjust to fit your nose. This mask can sell for $126 to $176. This mask has upwards to a 2-hour rating, no more than that, for chemical, biological, smoke, dust, fumes, mist.
The Neoteric Homeland Hood promises the added protection of nuclear, biological, and chemical, or NBC, filters.
It will filter out certain chemical agents as well as 2 forms of nuclear contamination, alpha and beta. It will not filter out gamma.
The OptiFit full face piece respirator also uses NBC filters. In field tests, it protected the wearer from mustard gas for over 2 hours. It costs around $200. Even the best mask is worthless without a good seal.
A good way to tell if you have a seal is to simply close off for just a moment the inlet to the cartridges, breathe in or exhale to see if there's a negative pressure felt inside the mask. If there is, you should have a good seal on the face.
For even more protection, you can get a full chemical biological protective suit.
These are primarily sold to the law enforcement, EMS, and medical and fire department personnel. However, we have sold some of these to private citizens for their own personal use. This may be a bit much for home protection.
This strange-looking battery-powered contraption promises to protect your baby from contaminated air. It even comes with a pouch that can deliver formula to your infant through a tube.
You have the option of carrying your infant out of harm's way, or you can also transport the infant in a backpack mode by simply taking the straps and applying it to your back.
There is also a respirator available for slightly older children. It looks a lot like its counterpart from half a century ago, only this model uses a motorized blower to get air into the suit. And thanks to technology, no member of the family needs to go unprotected.
Energizing the units.
The Pet Shield promises to give your dog or cat 6 hours worth of contaminant-free air. Some experts doubt that masks and respirators are necessary for the average person. What the government recommends is being prepared to seal up doors and vents in a room in your house. Duct tape is commonly recommended, but a new product called ChemTape promises to provide extra protection against chemical attack.
It's important to have a seal all the way around to keep out any inward filtration of any outside contaminants into your home.
It's recommended that you pre-cut large sheets of plastic to fit the doors in your safe room.
Once we reach the bottom of the door, We want to make sure we get a seal on the floor to prevent any inward leakage of contaminants under the door seal or door frame.
Sealing yourself in a room might protect you from an attack at home. But what can technology do to safeguard you at the stadium? Next, see what's being done to take you safely out to the ballgame. It's now several days into the dark winter war game, simulating a bioterror attack on America. And already, interstate commerce has collapsed. The National Security Council is mulling the need to declare martial law. It's becoming clear that America is not prepared for this new type of threat. Recent history provides many examples of terrorist attacks on public places. Cafes in Israel, Olympic Park in Atlanta. But these attacks have been with conventional weapons, bombs. In 1995, though, the Aum Shinrikyo cult in Japan unleashed a chemical attack on the Tokyo subway system using sarin nerve gas. Hundreds were hospitalized. 12 died.
What a lot of people also don't realize, though, is in addition to the use of sarin, the Aum Shinrikyo cult also attempted on a number of occasions to disseminate biological weapons in various cities in Japan. As far as we know, nobody became ill, nobody died from those events.
There are even ominous reports that cult members traveled to Africa during an outbreak of the deadly hemorrhagic fever, Ebola.
The concern is that they might have been trying to isolate the Ebola virus for potential use as a terrorist weapon.
Could a terrorist group attack subway systems in American cities with chemical or biological agents? What about other public places?
I think that gatherings of large number of people in public places is, in fact, one of the areas where we have to be vigilant about our security.
Congress was worried enough about chemical, biological, and radiological threats to public places that in 1999 they authorized the creation of special National Guard units called Weapons of Mass Destruction Civil Support Teams. Stationed throughout the country, these teams conduct security pre-sweeps of major events and are also trained to assist emergency first responders in the case of an actual attack.
If there's ever a possibility that any sort of terror or weapons of mass destruction incident may take place, that's where the civil support teams here in the nation may become involved.
In 2003, a drill was held at an arena in Northern California, using a scenario in which terrorists released cyanide during a basketball game. While law enforcement searches the arena for perpetrators and medics tend to the sick, the National Guard Civil Support Team rolls into action. They wear full Level A protective gear as they sweep the arena with their chemical and biological detection devices. They are able to quickly locate the source of the cyanide as the local authorities successfully apprehend the mock terrorist. The first responders returning from the scene undergo a careful decontamination process under the supervision of the National Guard.
I'm going to go ahead and check you and make sure that all the decontamination is off your body.
This was only a drill.
Throw your stuff in the bag here.
But the reality of the threat has brought California's 9th Weapons of Mass Destruction Civil Support Team to the World Series, the Super Bowl, and on this day, to the Stanley Cup Hockey Championships at the Arrowhead Pond in Anaheim, California, where they've been asked to conduct a pre-sweep of the venue. 10 a.m., 4 hours before the first spectators start trickling into the arena for the sold-out game. 6 hours until the puck will drop before 20,000 screaming fans. At a fire department training facility near the arena, the National Guard team has established a staging area. As soon as they arrive, the survey team prepares for the pre-sweep. They will be using the latest in high-tech gear to search for any chemical, biological, or radiological materials.
In this particular case, what we're able to do is actually check on the stadium and the surrounding areas and actually check in advance and make certain assessments based on what might be potential threats in order to safeguard the people before the event even takes place.
11 a.m. The survey team members gather up their gear and depart for the Anaheim Pond. Staff Sergeant Garodin's first task is to gather air samples from several locations around the arena using a device called the BT-550.
We just sit it down in the room, let it run, and when it's running, the working light will be on, and then when it stops, because you can hear it, it'll stop, then we know that it's complete.
The team also has equipment for detecting chemical agents.
This is our Akata Army Chemical Agent Detector. Basically, it's an area monitor. It monitors for chemical, nerve, and blister type agents.
If the Akata's alarm goes off, the survey team uses another device, a handheld detector called the ICAM, to find the source of the trouble.
Like an Akata takes the whole room perspective. It lets you know that there's something there, and the ICAM pinpoints it. You know there's an agent there, a suspected agent. We just take the ICAM and it can pinpoint like it's in this area and it's not, over there, and we can clear that area.
While the survey team is busy at the arena, the science officers prepare the mobile lab to receive their samples. 1:00 p.m. A call comes in from the survey team. Their chemical detectors are getting a positive reading on a fluid in a supply closet at the arena. The team suspects that the substance is a harmless cleaning solution, but they're not taking any chances. A sample of it will be brought back along with the air samples for further analysis.
We're just bringing it back just to see, make sure before people get into the stadium that it definitely is a cleaning solution.
If any of the samples they bring back are confirmed as positive for chemical, biological, or radiological materials, the authorities will want to know what areas around the stadium need to be evacuated. Sergeant First Class Robert Goldsmith creates computer models of how various agents might spread. He uses current weather information to model the plume.
You put in a type of suspected device, suspected agent, based off of what they get hits on downrange. You plug in information, humidity, temperature, wind speed, wind direction. It does the work itself.
1:15 p.m., the survey team returns from the arena with their samples. The first step is to bring them into the airtight glove box inside the mobile lab to render them non-hazardous and prepare them for analysis. Then the samples are analyzed using the ruggedized Advanced Pathogen Identification Device, or RAPID. If the team gets a positive reading for a suspected biological agent, they will examine the sample under a special microscope that has the ability to connect to the internet and send images directly to the Centers for Disease Control for further analysis. Early detection is key to preventing a successful biological attack on a stadium or arena. Imagine if an infectious agent were to spread undetected at an event such as the Stanley Cup. 20,000 fans would head back into their communities as unwitting carriers.
There would be a lot of panic. Hospitals overflowed. It sounds like it's going to be mass hysteria. Knowing what we know now, if something happens during this event, within the next couple hours, we can go ahead and start on the right antibiotics.
All of the samples taken from the arena today test negative for biological agents. But the RAPID doesn't screen for chemical agents. For that, the civil support team turns to a device called the HAPsite. The device compares the sample against a comprehensive library of 150,000 known chemicals. In a matter of minutes, the team is able to confirm that all of the samples taken from the arena, including the suspicious cleaning solution, are harmless.
It was a very successful pre-sweep, and identifying those hazardous materials that already exist is fantastic. That's considered success.
In 1999, there were only 10 weapons of mass destruction civil support teams working throughout the country. Today, that number has grown to more than 30. Next, Find out what's being done to keep your dinner table safe. It's now day 6 of the Dark Winter war game, testing the government's response to a simulated smallpox attack on America. The simulation began with the release of the virus at shopping malls in 3 states. Now, 2,000 people are sick. 300 have died. And riots are breaking out at vaccination clinics across the country. Thanks to immunizations, smallpox was eradicated from nature in 1977. Why then are we still worried about it being used as a terrorist weapon? The answer lies in samples of the disease that were kept for research purposes after its eradication.
One was kept in the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention in Atlanta, and the other one was kept in Moscow. The reason for preserving the samples was to be able to study the disease and also to be able to prepare vaccines should the event or should the need ever arise again.
It's the sample that was kept in Moscow that now has American scientists worried. After the collapse of the Soviet Union, a defector who had been a senior scientist in their bioweapons program made a startling revelation. The Soviets had been experimenting with weaponizing smallpox and creating even more lethal strains. With the former Soviet Union now in disarray, the potential exists for terrorists to get their hands on the Soviet smallpox, or more likely, for them to seek out former Soviet scientists for their expertise.
We have been working with the international community to make sure that any of those scientists who might have been working on novel biological agents like variations on smallpox have other legitimate research to do that will be a positive contribution to their economies, as opposed to potentially going somewhere else and working for someone such as a rogue nation or a terrorist group.
The concern with biological terrorism is how inexpensive it is to carry out.
To produce nuclear weapons, for example, requires a tremendous amount of infrastructure. You have to have nuclear facilities, you have to have nuclear material. Chemical weapons are probably next in terms of cost. They also require a certain amount of infrastructure, but you can do them for much cheaper than you can nuclear weapons. Biological weapons don't require a lot of infrastructure to produce. And as we saw in the case of the anthrax in the male, the impact can be very large.
In 1984, a religious cult in Oregon, followers of the Bhagwan Sri Rajneesh, carried out what's widely considered the first biological terrorist attack in America. Cult members were looking for a way to keep local citizens away from the polls in the upcoming elections so that the cult could win control of the county government.
They thought if people were sick and didn't vote, that then they would have an opportunity to win the vote and have a greater play in the local politics.
In September of 1984, cult members decided to test out their strategy. They carried out a stealthy attack at 10 area restaurants, allegedly contaminating salad bars with salmonella bacteria. More than 750 people were sickened.
In that case, it's interesting because the objective of the terrorism was not to cause anyone to die, and as far as we know, no one did. What happened was that people got sick from eating salad from these contaminated salad bars.
County health officials were able to trace the outbreak to the salad bars. But since salmonella is such a common cause of food poisoning, they had trouble proving that it was an intentional terrorist act.
It might have even gone unappreciated as an intentional attack, except that someone came out of the terrorist group and informed authorities. So salmonella it's a very common organism. Again, it's associated with food poisoning, but it is also one that can be used as an incapacitating agent, as an agent of hostility or an agent of terrorism.
The incident in Oregon raises an alarming question. How can we be assured of the safety of our food and water supplies? Could a terrorist get away with contaminating all of the meat at a given food processing plant, or sickening an entire town by dumping chemicals into a reservoir? Researchers at Pacific Northwest National Laboratory are working on defeating those threats. They're developing a highly sensitive chemical and biological terrorism detector that could be used to monitor the food and water supplies for terrorist attack. The detector functions much like the FBI's fingerprint matching system, comparing the organisms in a sample to a litany of known pathogens. Today, they're testing a chicken sample to see if it's tainted with the harmful E. coli bacteria. The chicken sample is placed on a slide and loaded into the detector. A key component of the device is a laser.
The laser will fire onto the surface of that target, and the ions will travel down this flight tube to the detector at the end of it.
What you're seeing is a magnified video image of the laser firing against the surface of the sample. This burst of energy creates the fingerprint, or spectra, that's used to analyze the sample. If the chicken bears the telltale fingerprint of E. coli, the detector will be able to alert us within a matter of minutes.
So now that we have a composite spectra, we can determine that it is E. coli.
Detection technologies hold great promise in the battle against foodborne terrorist attack. But it is impossible to screen every piece of food destined for your dinner table. If contaminated food does make it into the food supply, the key to saving lives will be rapid detection of the outbreak and a pinpointing of its source. The Centers for Disease Control has expressed interest in a technology being developed at Pacific Northwest National Labs called Starlight. Originally intended as a tool for military intelligence analysts, Starlight presents large amounts of information in a visual format, making it easier to sift through piles of data.
The widest bandwidth into the human mind is through your eyes. So if we can create a picture of the data, then we can get that information into an analyst's mind as quickly as possible.
Researchers here realized that this system could be used to quickly analyze outbreaks of foodborne illness.
These are records of E. coli incidents in the state of Washington. And what was it that caused that particular case? Was it hamburger? Was it dairy? Was it salad bar? Then we've plotted the locations of each incident here on the map. When we started looking at this data, we noticed that as you go along, bang, all of a sudden, all of the dairy incidents light up at the same time. They're all related to this one location. And so an expert looking at this would immediately know that something was going on at this particular time, at that particular location, just by being able to look at it.
Starlight is just one of many anti-terrorism technologies being developed at Pacific Northwest National Labs. They devote $70 million a year to Homeland Security research. Next, see how the windows in your house may someday warn you of a terrorist attack. It's now day 13 of the Dark Winter bioterrorism war game. All vaccine stocks have been depleted, and forcible restrictions on the civil liberties of citizens are deemed unavoidable. The disease has spread to 24 states and 15 other countries. In the event of an actual large-scale terrorist attack, the emergency first responders will need to have the latest high-tech gear. That's exactly what's being developed at Georgia Tech Center for Emergency Response Technology, Instruction and Policy, or CERTIP. Decision Aid is a software package that runs on a handheld computer. It's intended to help first responders assess a situation even before medical experts arrive.
The first responder, on approaching the site, would see a patient. They would select the new patient, enter personal information about the patient, height, weight, that sort of thing. Then it proceeds to run you through a series of questions.
The software takes this information and makes recommendations for treatment. CERTIP has also developed a medical reachback suitcase that allows experts to monitor the scene of a biological attack without entering the contaminated hot zone.
They can all see what's going on in the triage area, all the information that's being collected on the patients, and be able to monitor the different patients.
The terrorist attacks of September 11th, 2001 were a call to arms for American scientists. And suddenly, grant money was flowing from federal coffers to fund all kinds of anti-terrorism research. At Northwestern University, researchers in the emerging field of nanotechnology are working to create the ultimate bioterrorism detector.
Nanotechnology is a field that focuses on miniaturization and studying the consequences of miniaturization.
Researchers found that shining light through particles of gold that had been miniaturized into different sizes produced a startling effect, one that they hope to harness for use in their bioterrorism detector.
It's as simple as having individual indicators for each disease. If it turns up yellow, you have Ebola virus. If it turns up red, you have anthrax. If it turns up orange, you have DNA associated with tularemia.
The color-changing properties of these particles may someday result in windows that act as biosensors, lighting up in the presence of substances like anthrax. Building upon research begun at Northwestern, a company called Nanosphere has created the Veregene ID. It's the first commercially available bioweapons detector based on nanotechnology.
In the Veregene ID system, we've seen being placed for biowarfare detection in a number of different environments, water testing facilities, in the hands of the first responders.
Even before the anthrax mail attacks of 2001, Nanosphere was working with the Army to test the Veregene ID as an anthrax detector.
So what we're trying to do here is detect anthrax, and we have in these 8 vials samples that have anthrax and some that don't. And to each of these tubes, I will add gold nanoparticle probes that are specific for the anthrax genomic DNA.
If anthrax DNA is present in any of the samples, the tiny probes will bind to it. The samples are put on a slide and placed into the Veregene ID. Any samples containing anthrax will be indicated by bright spots on the screen.
Sample 1 is positive for anthrax, sample 2 is positive, 3, 4 positive, 5, 6 no anthrax, 7, 8 are our internal controls, they shouldn't light up, and 9, 10 are also positive.
The first users of nanotechnology detectors will likely be in the field of medicine.
Having a Veregene ID system that has been tailored for detecting those certain types of diseases that might be a biowarfare agent placed in the hospitals will allow them to detect it as early as possible and to screen out those potential patients that may be infected.
The vision is to have a detection system in every doctor's office in the world. And then I like to say, ultimately, every medicine cabinet in the world.
And with further advances in nanotechnology, you may someday even have the ultimate bioterrorism detector hanging beside the smoke detector in your home, silently screening your air for harmful agents like anthrax, Ebola, and smallpox. When the Dark Winter War Game was held in June of 2001 to simulate a smallpox attack on America, the results of the fictional scenario were startling. 2 weeks, mass chaos, 3 million people infected, 1 million dead. It was made frighteningly clear to the exercise participants that the country was not prepared to respond to a major terrorist attack. Drastic upgrades would be needed in communication, planning, and technology. After the terrorist attacks of September 11th, changes have been made, and an urgent push is underway to develop technologies to protect innocent civilians from all forms of terrorism. Smallpox, nerve gas, dirty bombs. Should we be afraid? Are we entering a new arms race with an even more dangerous adversary?
I don't think they have the scientific firepower to dedicate large teams of researchers like we're dedicating to combat the problems they're creating. And so I think we're on different playing fields in that regard.
Building upon the technologies of the past, and with an eye towards the future, American scientists are working every day on new ways to keep civilians safe.
I would not say that I could predict every way that an individual could choose to do harm to somebody else, but I am confident that we have many, many tools that we are bringing to bear to reduce the likelihood that Americans will become victims of such an attack.